I'm in Costa Mesa, California at the Waterborne headquarters, and I'm with Pat Dumas, the founder of Waterborne.
What's up, guys?
Who has been gracious enough to let us into his home, and his home is a half pipe in the middle of their headquarters, so we're sitting on their half pipe at Waterborne, and I wanted to cover tips on creating a good Waterborne complete setup, Pat, because I have enough experience now after a year of surf skating and dealing with a lot of different setups where I have a high degree. When I started, I didn't know what the hell I was doing, and especially on a Waterborne. So I was trying to put together a Waterborne setup. There's a lot of relationships with a surf skate that I just wasn't getting it right, and so for me, it wasn't a commentary on your product. It was a commentary on my inexperience with mechanical things and putting all this stuff together. I hadn't even skated. I was a non-skater too. I hadn't even come from a skating background. So for all of the other newbie beginners out there who are considering a Waterborne, I wanted to get from you, the creator of it, just tips on how to put together a good Waterborne complete setup.
Right on. Yeah, I'm happy to dive into that with you. So, my general rule of thumb for people that want to get into surf skating with Waterborne is start with a board that you're already used to. A cruiser, a longboard, a whatever. If you're used to it, you like the way it feels, you know where to put your feet on the board, adding our surf and rail adapter is going to enhance that board, and it's still going to feel familiar. You're just going to have this new ability to pump, turn on a dime, and carry speed through turns and power slide. So you cannot go wrong with an existing complete, whether it's one that you go out and shop for and you like how it is in the store with the intention of making it into a surf skate, or something that's been tucked away in your garage for years that you want to breathe new life into. You can't go wrong with a board that you're already used to. However, if you want to get into the semantics of setting up your ideal surf skate, I am so stoked to go through all the different things you could do that will change the way that your board rides. Because as you know, there's an infinite combination of wheels, trucks, and decks. Why don't we quickly talk about what a surf adapter is and what a rail adapter is, because that is what Waterborne does, and that is what's going to make the biggest change to your board. So the surf adapter is this right here. This is a durable coupling that mounts to any existing skateboard by having the truck mount to a pivoting plate and the deck mounting to a base, and then it gives your truck all this extra range of motion so that you could perform these tight maneuvers. Now you can set up a surf adapter with a couple block risers, and this is going to make sure that your deck sits level, and feels normal as you ride. Or you can add the optional rail adapter. When these two work in conjunction, the rail adapter and the surf adapter, you can really see how much flex you get out of them. And that means that your deck can get on rail really hard. It can hold all four wheels on the ground, which means that they're gripping, you're ripping, and it's just gonna feel extremely natural and intuitive while you ride, because your deck is gonna be leaned over and it's gonna be holding your feet to the board, instead of trying to grip your feet against a board that's sitting flat on the ground. In terms of creating your ideal board, let's talk about some key differences in setup. First, there are longboards and the way that I classify a longboard isn't necessarily by shape. It's, are your feet within the wheelbase, or is 1 foot within the wheelbase and 1 foot is on the tail while you're riding? So boards that have a tail, I consider them a cruiser, and boards where your feet are gonna sit in between the two wheels, that is more of a longboard. So what you'll find with a longboard is that they could do all of the things that a surf skate can. They can pump, they can carve, and they can slide. However, without the tail, you're just gonna have a little bit more trouble accelerating from a standstill. And what you're gonna wanna do is get a little bit of momentum on the board and then start to pump and drive it and generate speed and do all your surf skating maneuvers. With the tail, you are able to pivot more off that rear truck, which means that you can accelerate quickly from a standstill and get the board moving. The next thing that's really important, the distinction, would be how long is your wheelbase. This is huge for how the board's gonna ride. A board with a really short wheelbase is going to accelerate really quickly from pumping, and then it'll be kind of winded at a lower speed. So you might be able to pump this from a standstill to like 8 miles an hour. But then a board with a longer wheelbase, like say this one, you could pump and cruise at 10, 12 miles an hour. And when you add the rail adapter, you're gonna get a much smoother drive when you're pumping at high speed than if you have a standard truck on your tail.
Patrick, one tiny little detail is using TKPs versus RKPs. Can you talk about the difference between that? And first of all, what does that even mean? And then how does that change the ride if you're using a traditional kingpin truck versus a reverse kingpin truck?
So a traditional kingpin truck has the nut adjustment for your bushings on the inside of the two axles, and a reverse kingpin truck has the nut adjustment and bushings on the outside of the two axles. Now what this is designed for is traditional kingpins will give you a greater turning to lean ratio. So these are gonna turn harder and lean less. Reverse kingpin are gonna lean more and turn a little bit less. The other benefit is reverse kingpin trucks tend to be taller, so you could fit a bigger piece of urethane, a bigger wheel under your board without worrying about wheel bite. Traditional kingpin trucks sit a little bit lower, so you could compensate for this with extra risers, but generally they're going to mean that you want to put a smaller wheel on when you use them with the surf adapter.
If you come from a skateboard, you're probably going to have a TKP, right?
Yes.
And if you come from a longboard, you're going to have an RKP.
Absolutely.
But the Waterborne will work for either.
Absolutely.
But it just will have differences in the ride.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The difference I find in the way that these boards ride is a reverse kingpin is going to be more flowy, and a traditional kingpin is more darty and agile, along with being lower to the ground. If you're setting up a board from scratch, my general rule of thumb for truck width is you want the edge of your wheel to be about as wide as the deck. If your wheels stick out further than the deck, you're going to find that you don't have enough leverage to control the adapter in the trucks as much. If the deck is significantly wider and you're using narrow trucks, it might be a bit on the squirrely side, and small inputs have a big impact on your direction. Now what's interesting though is if you take a penny nickel board, which has really narrow trucks, this works fine with the adapter because it's also got a really narrow deck, so you never have too much leverage to control the board. It's perfect.
And for our final question, Pat, you brought out a bunch of like really interesting stuff here. Talk to us about just how creative you can get with the Waterborne.
You are only limited to your ability to build and your imagination. Anything that you put a set of trucks, adapters, wheels on, it's going to be able to pump, carve, and slide, just like any other surf skate. So this is our pallet wood board. This thing's pretty dope. It's absolutely flat. It has no grip at all, but it shreds. We all love ripping this thing. It looks like it could, fall apart at any second.
What in the hell is this back here that you've got a Waterborne on?
So this is our backer board. It does have like some really important significance to the company because all these names are people who backed us on Kickstarter in 2017. And I really wanted to show that you can put a Waterborne surf adapter on literally anything and have it ride really well. So this board, you don't want to push around because it weighs like 25 pounds, but we put an electric board setup on it and we ripped around Newport and it was so fun. So you get up to speed and you are just flowing. I mean, it's like riding a boat but controlling the boat with your feet.
How long is this?
It's 10 feet long, and I think it's got a 6-foot wheelbase. You're 6'2", right?
Yeah.
Lay down, would you? Let's see. Is it really 6 feet? Or are you really 6'2"? That's the question. Well, we're gonna find out.
The wheelbase on the Waterborne backer board
is 6'2". according to you, your body. But yeah, this thing is such a rip. We took the motors off it because we broke them, but it is still really fun downhill.
Well, I really appreciate you guys having me. This has been a treat. I've had a blast with you guys, and I really appreciate the tips because this is very helpful. Because again, like I said, I think that's one kind of the challenges of the Waterborne is just knowing how to put together a complete setup, and so it's really helpful to get from the founder himself. And you can do all kinds of stuff with the Waterborne. And Pat, again, thanks, appreciate that. And there you go. helpful tips for you as you're putting together your waterborne setup at home.